Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Amy L Bernstein. She is an author, an award-winning journalist, and a book coach. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you, Ajay. I'm very, very glad to be here.
You are welcome to the show, Amy. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll be talking about writing, publishing, and marketing as an author. You are an author of several books. So first to understand from you, Amy, people know about you that you are a writer, an author, a playwright, certified non-fiction book coach, all these things. I want to understand about your journey through you, so that I don't come in between. If you can share a bit about your journey as an author, so that the audience knows who they are listening to, who they are learning for, who is the master for today's masterclass.
Sure, absolutely, and thank you. So I would say that the road that led me to where I am now is very, very crooked and has had many, many branches along the way. I often tell people that the only thing I could ever do pretty well was write. I'm terrible with numbers. I'm not very good in the kitchen. I can't sew. There's many things I cannot do well, but I can put words on paper. And so I spent about 30 years or so building a career in many, many facets of the writing profession. And that included writing for large government organizations, for nonprofit organizations. I was a newspaper journalist. I was a journalist for a public radio network. So always something having to do with the written word or the spoken word, because I was also an executive speechwriter where you're writing for, someone else to read out loud what you've scripted. And I felt that it just wasn't enough. Something was missing. And so, somewhere in my early middle aged years, I decided, you know what? I've got to write fiction somehow. I've got to start creating things that are just mine, and I'm not writing for anyone else. And so, I started in the playwriting world. I had really been drawn to theater as a kid, and I think that bug sort of stayed in me. And, I began writing plays, and then I started writing novels. And I guess, as they say, the rest is history. But I will say that I really had to screw up a lot of courage to make that transition over time from writing nonfiction for other people to really writing creative fiction, really for myself. And now I also have a nonfiction book coming out. But I'm really glad that I took that very, very crooked path.
Absolutely, absolutely. The rest is history, but for a lot of people, writing is still a lot of mystery. So let's try and get that solved through you. One thing is you talked about that you may not be good at so many things. I am not good at so many things myself, and I'm not even an author, but you are an author. So in terms of, it is good that people know about what they are good at. But people who are good at writing also, many a times they feel that they can be a writer, an author, but they are always, they have so many self-doubts. How do you let the author or writer within you, as you set that author free and get to the world, the things that are, the stories that are in your mind? How do
I,
you do that? How do you deal with this thing called
right.
self-doubt?
I'm so glad you raised that question because doubt is currently my favorite word. The book that's going to be coming out later this year is called Wrangling the Doubt Monster, Fighting Fears, Finding Inspiration, because I realize how much all of us out there, whether we're aspiring writers or artists in any field whatsoever, or even creative entrepreneurs, we really need to wrestle and manage those self-doubts that we have that hold us back. I will say this about writing. Um, Unlike so many other kinds of disciplines, I guess, the only way to be a writer is literally to write. And that sounds so silly, but it really isn't. If this is something you are really called to do, then you're going to find yourself doing it. And you've got to write the stories that you want to tell and that please you and excite you the most. And you can't be too focused on an external marketplace, at least not initially, because it'll get in your way. So you really have to write from your own heart and, tell the stories you want to tell. And that's where it begins every time.
Right, right. I mean, one thing I wanted to ask from you was, ask you was, a lot of people from journalism background are there into writing. They want to write, but you know, and you have also been a award-winning journalist. No, in terms of journalism mostly deals with talking about facts, and the writing is not always about facts, especially about about things which you have to imagine whether they are it has happened in your life. How do you separate that habit of yours that you build all through your life, and suddenly you want to write a book that is a bit more like fiction? How does that work? For I
Right.
want to understand this specifically for a lot of writers who want to be authors.
Right. Well, it's certainly every writer's path is different, right? Of course. So I can only speak to mine. I'll start with a side note, which is many journalists go on to write phenomenal nonfiction books, and they stay. Let's put it this way: they stay on their side of the fence. So there are many journalists who don't want to write fiction, and they don't write fiction. But to speak to your point, you are absolutely correct. Many writers or journalists, people writing nonfiction, long to write fiction, and many do so, very effectively. Here's what happened to me. I've never really left my journalistic mindset behind. I do a tremendous amount of real research for all of my novels. And so I'm researching a particular time, I'm researching a particular profession, did a lot of research about archaeology for two of my books that bring archaeology into the story. So I have pages and pages of notes just from pure research that make their way into my fiction. And I tend to set my novels in a kind of speculative world where I'm asking a lot of what if questions, and I like to mix fact and fantasy. Because I find that a fascinating thing to do, where you're reading a book which is a world that you somewhat can recognize, and yet it's different. It's shifted. It's maybe in the near future. It's in a different future. It's in a future that could emerge but hasn't. And so you're always right on that line, blending what's true with what might be true or might come true. And I love sort of living in that in-between gray area. I find that a very exciting, fun place to be for fiction. So my journalistic habits are very much alive and well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Coming back to the uh, point of self-doubt, uh, you have already talked a bit about your forthcoming upcoming book. In terms of a few points that people or budding writers or people who are having this self-doubt, that they can remember, this that will always be at the back of their mind whenever this self-doubt creeps in. Rest, obviously, when is the book exactly coming out so that they can learn more about it?
The book's coming out in mid-September from Bancroft Press, which is in the U.S. And my website, which we can share online or you can share in your notes. You can
Yes.
sign up for my if you join my website list, you'll get all the pre-sale information for that. But I really do appreciate the question about what do we do about the doubts. And here's the main thing that you have to sort of accept first. The first thing is you cannot banish doubt. You cannot do away with it. It's very much baked into sort of the human condition. It's part of what we are as human beings. We're going to question, and people have been doing this, for eternity. Socrates was very famous, the ancient Greek philosopher. He was famous for questioning, what he knew and what he didn't know, and he was very humble about it. And so that's always been part of our thought patterns. But what you can do, particularly if you're taking creative risks, you're trying to make something from nothing, and you may not be getting a lot of encouragement, what you can do is learn to manage your doubts. You have to be able to see them for what they are, and you have to set them aside in a way and say, almost talk to it, really. I mean, it sounds kind of ridiculous, but it's a really good practice. Say to your doubt, all right, you're over here telling me I can't do this. I don't have the talent. I'm not good enough. I hear you, but I'm going to go forward and do this thing anyway because I really want to. And you can get yourself to such a place of sort of creative joy and even sustaining a creative practice of some kind if you allow those doubts to live inside you but not to stop you. That's the key thing, is not to let it stop you. You have to acknowledge it, but then you just continue on. It's just like sitting on your shoulder, but it doesn't slow you down.
Right, right. Now, I mean, in terms of my doubts, suppose if they get cleared, and I fail, and I can be a good writer. But whether I should be a good writer, is writing for me at all? What are there other factors that one should consider in terms of making money, in terms of uh, other things that you would want to help people know about? Because writing can be, or being an author can be, a totally different line than one is. One can be an expert, but may not be that successful as an author in terms of the money part.
Well, you have to be very honest about why you're writing. What do you want from it? Some people just want to write only for themselves. They want to keep a journal. It's just for themselves to work something out, and it's never supposed to be seen by anyone else. The far other side of that whole spectrum is people want to write because they think they can write a bestseller. They want to become rich and famous. They want to go on a big book tour. They want their books to be turned into movies. That's all fine, but you have to be really honest with yourself about what your goals are. And even if you're honest with yourself about your goals, you have to recognize there's no guarantee that what you hope for is what will happen. I mean, we're in an age now where millions of people are self-publishing their books, meaning there's no institutional gatekeeper. You can write a book now. You can format it for free or for low cost. You can sell it digitally through Amazon and other outlets. So you can do all this for little to no dollars. You can even design your own cover if you want, or spend a few bucks on cover art from some other source. So you can do all that. And then, what are your dreams? There's millions of these books being published every day. Do you think yours is going to be noticed? Are you going to become a bestseller and win a loyal fan base? It's really hard to know the truth until you kind of go out and start, but you have to be honest about what your ambitions are, and then expect a lot of roadblocks and rejection along the way, because it's a very difficult thing to do.
Right, right. I mean, one more thing. Okay, I have decided to be a writer, and I, start writing. You talk about, stories, writing stories that let readers feel while making them think. Is this required, or is it an individual thing for one to follow? Because a lot of people want to get into other sort of a writing. Help us understand, why do you focus on these things?
Well, that's what I could think of as part of my author brand. And every author deserves to make his or her own brand. So if someone else might say, I'm going to write stories that make people laugh. I'm going to write stories that inspire them to deepen their faith. I'm going to write stories that bring injustice to light. You can do this any way that you want, and it really comes back to the same questions, which is, who do you want to read your work? Who do you want to read your books? Who is your reader? How do you want to be? How do you want your words to function out there in the world? And so these are the questions that you have to ask yourself. And then, as I noted, you can't always control the outcome, but you can certainly try by having strong intentions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Talking of, people, getting people to feel as well as to think. Nowadays, because of the social media, the attention span seems to have reduced quite a bit. So, does one need to also keep that in mind and look at the number of pages, or is it that they should just focus on the story or the idea itself while writing, like they used to do before?
In fact, many publishers want shorter books for the reasons that you mentioned. The attention spans have been shrinking. I see it in myself, and I'm someone who loves to read. But yes, I mean, shorter books have a much better chance in traditional marketplaces. And a shorter book would be, for example, in fiction, something that tops out around, say, anywhere from 65,000 to maybe 70 or 75,000 words. People who are writing these really, really, really long books, 100,000 words, 110,000 words, they're not likely to get published as a first-time author, and they might want to actually split them up into different books. But yes, shorter is increasingly preferred, and I think many readers are struggling with attention spans, which is another reason people will start a book. If it doesn't grip them, they'll just toss it aside and move on to the next one.
Right, right. I mean, now let's look at, suppose after all this thinking, I have written my book. Now, what do I do with that book? It's very tempting to get it published immediately. You can do that with self-publishing, and then there is the lure of traditional publishing. How do I decide which path to go? Because
That is,
one is
yeah.
an immediate result, one is
Right.
you have to go a
That is
different direction.
such an important question. So here are the considerations. If you're going to self-publish, on the one hand, you keep all the profits, right? There's no middleman involved, and so you get to keep whatever. Every time you sell a book, the profit on that book is yours. On the other hand, you're faced with having to market that book and having to get attention for it in the marketplace on your own. And you're either going to hire someone else who might be very expensive to help you with that, or you're going to try and do that on your own. It's very, very, very difficult to get attention for a self-published book. People are doing it, no question. And a lot of people, you've heard a lot about TikTok and, book influencers on TikTok. But that's like winning a lottery. It's not, that doesn't happen for everyone. And these are very hard things to achieve. So on the one hand, if you self-publish, you're in control of everything about the process, the words on the page, how you format the book, the cover that you choose. You keep all the profits, but you have to market all of it yourself. So there are risks and rewards. On the other hand, if you want to be what we call traditionally published, that means that a publisher, a big one in the US would be like Random House, Penguin, big names like this, Macmillan, these big names. You're entering a competition, because you either have to find a publisher, even including a smaller one, that will review your manuscript without another gatekeeper, meaning a literary agent, or you have to go out and try to find a literary agent who is the gatekeeper to the really big publishers. So you're in for a whole different set of experiences there. The competition has never been more fierce. More people are writing books and trying to market books and pitch them than ever before. So if you're going to go down that road, it takes a tremendous amount of skill and patience to pitch a book properly, professionally, and in a compelling way. So you have a whole different set of considerations. If you go down that road, it may take much longer. There's, again, no guarantees. And at the end of the day, you'll have a publisher, an established publisher, bring that book out for you, and they do a lot of the work for you. They'll edit for you. They'll do the cover for you. They'll do some marketing for you. Every author today still has to do a tremendous amount of marketing. So these are many different choices that authors are facing, and there's pros and cons to all of them.
Right, right. Let's come to the marketing part. How do you take that book to the market? Creative people, especially, they hate marketing because they have never learned about it. They only can write well, they can create well. So how do you then again deal with that part? If you have landed a traditional publisher, then that's a different thing. But still, you got to do things from your side too. And if you are a self-publisher, then the whole job is yours. How do you deal with that? And you are a book coach. Where does a book coach come in between? Help us also, in that sense too.
Right. Let me answer those separately. First of all, marketing is a conversation among authors all the time, because many of us truly hate it. We don't want to do. We feel like, I created the book. It shouldn't be my job to now go have to sell it. Somebody else should go out there and try and sell it, right? But in today's world, even among established traditional publishers, they expect the author to try to help sell the book, or create awareness for the book, I should say, in as many ways as possible, which gets us back to social media as one of the ways that publishers and agents are now scrutinizing an author's presence online. Do you have a presence? Do you have your own website? Do you have an email list of people who follow you? Do you publish a blog or a newsletter on a regular basis? Are you on TikTok? Are you on Facebook? Are you on Instagram? These things are part of our reality. Some authors embrace it. A lot of authors really hate it. When you're a writer, you're alone in a room with your pad or your computer, and you like it that way. So going on social media is not a natural inclination for many people who are writers. So it's sort of like there's a tension there, right? But a lot of writers have to do some of that. Now, the other piece of this, which I often remind people about when I'm talking to newer authors, is what I call engagement. And what engagement means is, how do you authentically connect with real human beings, not bots, not people who just click on likes, real human beings who are genuinely interested in what you have to say. And that's more about going out into the real world and giving talks to groups. It may be about helping to teach writing if you're so inclined and making connections with real people. It's joining communities of writers, as I've done all around the world, so that you feel connected to people who are going to support your work because they know you. It's maybe writing essays that are about your process or your experience with a book, and really trying to connect with human beings. And so that's the other piece of this. None of this is easy. It's very time consuming. It can cost you money. But that's the world that we're in, and unfortunately, there are no sort of magic bullets or shortcuts to get us around that. I haven't touched the book coaching topic yet, but we can do that next.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what does a book coach do? If someone were to get one book coach for himself or herself, what can they understand about this particular aspect?
Right. Um, writing. So writing is a very lonely and difficult business. And when you're a writer, you have very little opportunities to get a sense of whether you're on the right track with the thing that you're working on, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And it's very hard to get perspective and encouragement in a professional sense. This is not the same as turning to your spouse or your best friend or your sister. It's just not, because they're not in the field and they don't have that perspective on what you're writing. They may just say, "Oh, you're great. I love everything you do." That's actually not that helpful. So a book coach can play a very specific set of roles in a writer's life. On the one hand, a book coach can really help a writer to structure the work itself. Are they on the right path in fiction? Are they telling a story in a way that's really holding together? In nonfiction, are we really clear about your premise, about why you're writing this book and who the reader is? And so a book coach can help you get on track with a lot of input about structure, and can give you tools to work through some of these thorny issues that writers wrestle with all the time. Am I telling the story correctly? Did I start the story in the right place? Is it a good story? Is anybody interested? Is my protagonist, believable? These are things that a coach can help you with. A coach can also be your accountability partner, working with you to meet deadlines so that you as a writer don't lose heart and lose hope, and you keep writing because you've got someone to be accountable to. And your coach is really your cheerleader. They're there to remind you, you can do this. Writing a book is very hard work. It can take many, many months. Writing a book proposal in the nonfiction space can take many, many months before you're really ready to try and, show that you've got a tremendous project that's worth investing in. And so having a book coach by your side is someone to really help keep you on track, get the work done, and even deepen the work that you're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is much to understand about book writing. There is much to understand about publishing, marketing, and it always helps to have a book coach if it works for whoever is writing a book. So, as I said, there is so much to learn from you. So, what is the best way for people to learn more from you, about you, and also, about book coaching and also about your books, so that they can get the best out of you for what you are doing, what you are teaching, and what you are writing.
Yes, thank you, Ajay, for the chance to share that. I like people to start with my author website, which is amywrites.live. It's AMYWRITES, amywrites.live. And you'll see my books there. You'll see a perhaps slightly outdated calendar of writing classes that I am teaching, because I probably have not put the most recent ones on there. But most importantly, it's very easy to join my mailing list. I don't spam people. I never share names. It's a very safe thing to do, and that way you can learn more about wrangling the doubt monster when that comes around, as well as some other writing tips and tricks that I talk about from time to time.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.